The briefing room smelled faintly of coffee and metal polish, the kind of sterile scent that clung to every classified military facility. Around a long table sat 15 of the United States' most elite SEAL snipers, each one quietly inspecting their rifles, checking scopes, and calibrating wind meters. The room hummed with low tension, a mixture of anticipation and nerves. Outside, the desert sun began to rise, painting jagged mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, the air felt heavier with each passing second. Commander Harris entered without ceremony, his boots clicking against the polished floor. He was a veteran of countless operations, his face carved from years in the field, eyes sharp as flint. Every wrinkle seemed to map a mission, a decision, a life-or-death choice. His gaze swept across the team, pausing momentarily on Lieutenant Kara Sullivan. She was the newest in the unit but had earned her place through sheer precision, focus, and determination. Today, she would have to prove herself beyond training exercises. He placed a large digital map in the center of the table, its surface glowing with satellite imagery of a remote compound in the desert. "High-value target," Harris said, voice steady but firm. "He's responsible for multiple attacks overseas. We've waited for this opportunity for months. Our intel shows movement patterns and timings. You will engage from over 4,200 yards. One shot counts. Miss, and he disappears." A murmur ran through the room, barely audible over the whir of computers and air conditioning. 4,200 yards. It was a distance most snipers would call impossible. The room went quiet again, tension crackling like electricity. Kara leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the map. Tiny details caught her attention, a slight shimmer in the distance indicating heat mirages, a small curve in the terrain that could alter the bullet's trajectory, and the faintest trace of enemy patrols. Every detail mattered. She felt the familiar adrenaline surge, a calm, focused intensity she had trained for, the kind that made hours of practice feel effortless in moments that demanded perfection. She ran through mental calculations, adjusting for wind, gravity, and even the rotation of the Earth. This wasn't just skill, it was chess played on a deadly scale. Harris continued, pointing to points on the map. "Sniper positions here and here. Observation posts must remain concealed. Environmental factors are critical: wind speeds, humidity, temperature. You'll adjust shots based on these in real time. Remember, this is over 4,200 yards. That's not a small target at short range. This is a test of every lesson you've learned. You have one chance. Fail and the target is gone. Collateral damage is unacceptable." His eyes narrowed, scanning each sniper. "We are precise, we are patient, and we succeed together. Any mistakes and lives are lost." The team nodded, some silently, some adjusting their gear in anticipation. Whispers of doubt flickered across faces, but Kara felt a strange serenity. Her years of rigorous training, the solitary mornings practicing in sub-zero temperatures, the nights spent calculating trajectories under moonlight, all of it had led to this moment. She thought of her team, each relying on her skill, each trusting her without question. Responsibility weighed on her, yes, but not fear. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. Harris paused at the front of the room, letting silence stretch. "You will deploy at 500, he said. "Insertion via ground and air recon. The desert is unforgiving, visibility is low at dawn. Every second counts. You have to be ready for every scenario. Failure is not an option. Does everyone understand?" Heads nodded, but the tension lingered. 15 elite snipers were starring at a challenge that had defeated most trained marksmen, yet here they were ready. Finally, Kara allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible breath. She checked her rifle, adjusted her gloves, and looked around the room. This wasn't just another mission. It was the kind of mission that tested everything a soldier had ever learned. Outside, the desert wind whispered against the mountains as if anticipating the impossible. And in that quiet, charged moment, Kara knew that everything would come down to one shot. One perfect, impossible shot. The desert stretched endlessly under the rising sun, a canvas of shifting gold and brown, jagged ridges cutting shadows across the barren landscape. The SEAL team moved like ghosts, their boots silent against loose sand and rocky outcroppings. Each step was deliberate, measured, the kind of movement honed over countless missions. Kara led the rear, her eyes scanning every ridge, every dip, every shadow that might conceal enemy patrols. The heat was still bearable in the early dawn, but the desert had a way of punishing even the smallest mistake. One wrong step, one noise out of place, and the mission could unravel. The snipers spread out along predetermined coordinates, each finding the perfect vantage point. Telescopic scopes gleamed in the first sunlight, instruments and wind meters carefully adjusted. The air was dry and sharp, carrying faint traces of distant sand and heat. For these soldiers, the world had narrowed down to tiny points of focus. The wind's direction, the bullet's drop over miles of terrain, the sway of a target's hand. Precision was everything, and the desert, with its invisible currents and shifting light, was a relentless teacher. One by one, the first snipers fired. A shot rang out, echoing across the canyons like a gunmetal drumbeat. A faint cloud of sand puffed near the target, but the enemy continued unaware. Another shot, another miss. Then a third. 15 attempts in total, and still the high-value target moved untouched, blending with shadows as if mocking their efforts. Each miss carried weight, the tension rising like an invisible tide. Kara watched from her position, eyes unblinking through her scope. The failures were not just frustrating, they were lessons in the desert's cruelty. Each sniper had calculated, measured, and executed, yet the combination of distance, wind, heat, and terrain proved treacherous. She could feel the frustration ripple through the team, the tight line of muscles along shoulders and jaws, the subtle gestures of doubt creeping into movements that were usually flawless. Even Commander Harris, stoic and rarely shaken, exhaled with visible irritation. "Anyone else?" he barked, voice cutting across the silent desert like a whip. His tone was equal parts challenge and frustration. 15 snipers had missed, each with the skill to have hit at lesser distances, yet here they were, staring at impossibility. Some team members looked down at their rifles, checking scopes again, hoping the next calculation might make the difference. Whispers of disbelief ran through the ranks. Over 4,200 yards. This wasn't just difficult, it was nearly mythical. Kara moved forward, unhurried, every motion deliberate. She laid her rifle across the sand, adjusting the bipod, eyes scanning every detail. The desert spoke in subtle ways only trained eyes could read, the flicker of heat, the direction of wind over distant ridges, even the slight shimmer from the target's building. She ran her fingers along the stock, feeling the familiar weight, the cold steel, a comforting reminder of hours spent training alone under harsher conditions than this. Time slowed as she checked her readings, recalculating angles and bullet trajectory in her mind. The desert was no longer just terrain. It was an instrument she could read, interpret, and if she was precise enough, command. The faint sound of sand shifting beneath her boots, the whisper of wind against rocks, the distant movement of the target, all of it became part of a rhythm only she could follow. Her teammates glanced at her, some in quiet awe, some skeptical. But Kara felt a singular focus, a clarity that came only when one's entire being aligned with the mission. Commander Harris's eyes narrowed, following her movements. He had seen countless attempts fail in the past, yet something about Kara's calm, almost meditative demeanor made him pause. The desert had humbled veterans before, but Kara moved with a quiet confidence, as if she had already calculated every possible variable. She was ready. Outside, the desert sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the team's positions. The tension was palpable, every missed shot lingering in the thin air. 15 attempts, 15 misses, and now all eyes turned toward Kara. The silence was deafening. The desert held its breath. Harris's hand hovered near his sidearm, but he did not intervene. This was her moment. The impossible was about to be attempted. Kara settled into position, the desert stretching endlessly before her. Every muscle was still, every nerve focused. The rifles of the other snipers lay silent around her, a chorus of failure that hung heavy in the air. 15 attempts had failed. Commander Harris's challenge, anyone else? still echoed in her mind not as intimidation but as a dare. She felt no panic, only clarity. Every breath, every heartbeat was measured. In her world, seconds were magnified, distance stretched, and the impossible became a calculation of physics and patience. She adjusted her rifle, testing the bipod against the rocky ground. Even the tiniest instability could ruin the shot. Kara's gloves rubbed the cold steel lightly, fingers tracing the contours of the stock. She had memorized every inch of her weapon, every calibration, every rifling spin, every environmental variable that could influence a bullet over 4,200 yards. This was not just shooting. It was a symphony of science, skill, and instinct. One miscalculation, even a fraction of an inch, and the opportunity would be lost. The desert wind whispered past, hot and dry, carrying grains of sand across the rocks. Kara listened. The subtle shifts in the breeze told her more than any instrument could, a swirl from the ridge above, a gust from a distant canyon. She adjusted her calculations in her head, factoring in temperature, humidity, and the slight curvature of the earth. At this distance, gravity was no longer a simple downward pull. It was a slow, inevitable arc that demanded precise correction. Her eyes scanned the target compound, noticing every flicker, every movement, even the sway of a curtain in the wind. She visualized the shot in slow motion, bullet tracing the air, spinning over the desert floor, bending ever so slightly with the wind, finding its mark with precision. Training flashed through her mind. Hours on isolated ranges, nights under starlight, adjusting for impossible distances in simulations. Every failure she had endured was a lesson etched in muscle memory. Today, it all mattered. Kara's pulse slowed as her mind synchronized with her body. She could feel time stretching, every millisecond a chance to refine her aim. Around her, the team whispered, tension rippling through the silent ranks. Commander Harris watched, expression unreadable, though his jaw tightened. He had seen moments like this before, but rarely with such calm intensity from a soldier so young. Kara felt their eyes on her, but she welcomed it. Distractions were irrelevant. Only the wind, the distance, and the bullet mattered. She exhaled slowly, releasing all unnecessary thought, all doubt, all fear. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Her scope magnified the target, the distant figure almost imperceptible against the desert's shifting light. She adjusted her aim for the tiny variations in elevation, the subtle distortion caused by heat waves rising from the sand. Every second was a lifetime, every calculation a thread in the fabric of success or failure. She could feel the desert around her, the sand, the wind, the sun's early rays reflecting off rocks, all conspiring to test her precision. Kara recalled the training mantra that had carried her through every impossible shot: measure twice, breathe once, and trust the rifle. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cold metal against her cheek, the weight of the scope against her eye, the tension in the bipod, the earth beneath her chest. The world shrank to a single point, the target. Everything else faded: noise, doubt, fear. Only the shot existed, and in it the culmination of every discipline, every lesson, every heartbeat that had brought her here. The other snipers held their breath. Commander Harris leaned slightly forward, sensing the focus radiating from Kara. The desert seemed to pause with her, time itself slowing in anticipation. One shot, one chance, over 4,200 yards against wind, distance, and doubt. Kara exhaled, steadying her aim, her mind calm, her body a vessel of preparation. The impossible was about to be attempted, and for the first time that morning, hope returned to the room. Kara exhaled slowly, feeling the rifle settle into her shoulders like an extension of her own body. The desert around her seemed to hold its breath. 4,200 yards. The number echoed in her mind not as fear but as challenge. She had visualized this shot countless times, calculated every arc, every wind shift, every micro variation in trajectory. Now it was no longer practice. This was reality. One shot, one chance. The impossible lay before her, waiting. The sun was climbing higher, reflecting off distant rocks and shimmering off the target compound. Heat waves distorted the air, creating faint ripples in the scope. Every sniper around her had already failed, 15 attempts, all misses. Harris's voice had long faded, replaced by the tense silence of anticipation. Kara's teammates exchanged glances, some frozen in disbelief, others trying to calm the storm of adrenaline threatening to overtake them. Yet Kara remained utterly still, every nerve aligned, every breath measured. She recalculated once more, angle, wind, gravity, even the subtle pull of the earth over such a distance. Every small detail mattered. Her scope magnified the target, tiny against the desert horizon. The target moved slightly, unaware of the danger looming thousands of yards away. Kara's mind slowed time, breaking the moment into fractions. Inhale, exhale, trigger alignment, breath, and release. She felt the rifle's vibration against her cheek, the bipod biting into the sand, and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat syncing with the desert itself. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet left the barrel with a soft, precise report. It was invisible to the naked eye, a single streak of intent traveling through miles of open desert. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the bullet spun through the hot air, carried by calculated force and centuries of physics, bending imperceptibly with wind and gravity, arcing toward the target. The snipers held their breath, every second stretched into eternity. Time seemed to slow. The desert, the sun, the wind, the very earth, all held still as the projectile flew toward its mark. Commander Harris clenched his jaw, unwilling to look away. Every veteran in the room leaned forward, eyes glued to their scopes, hearts pounding. This was the kind of shot legends were made of, one that defied belief, skill, and physics alike. The tiny dot that was the high-value target seemed impossibly far, almost unreachable. Yet Kara's bullet inched closer, spinning steadily, invisible yet inevitable. The desert trembled under its silent momentum, each grain of sand a witness to the impossible. Finally, with a soft thud and a barely perceptible tremor, the bullet hit the target. Silence followed, heavier than any gunfire. The HVT collapsed, neutralized without harming the compound or nearby civilians. Kara exhaled, calm and composed, though every fiber of her being vibrated with the intensity of the moment. Around her, disbelief erupted into awe. The team stared, some mouths open, others frozen mid-breath. 15 had failed. One had succeeded, and that one was Kara. Harris finally allowed himself a slow, deliberate exhale. "Impossible," he murmured under his breath, almost to himself. The room buzzed with a mix of adrenaline and shock. Whispers ran through the team, eyes wide, voices trembling with disbelief. "Did she just?" one whispered. "That's 4200 yards," another muttered, as if saying the number aloud made it more real. Kara, however, remained focused, scanning the area for secondary threats. Her mind was already thinking ahead, already planning the team's next move. The desert seemed to exhale with her, heat waves shimmering as if acknowledging her mastery. What had just happened was not luck. It was years of preparation, hundreds of failed shots, every calculation made with calm precision. Kara's bullet had defied impossibility, and every veteran present recognized it. Even the most skeptical among them had witnessed the kind of shot that would be studied for years, a testament to skill, patience, and courage. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the barren landscape, Kara lowered her rifle slightly. Her eyes, sharp and calm, reflected satisfaction but not pride. The mission was complete. The impossible had been achieved. But in her mind, the desert was not finished testing her. There would always be another shot, another mission, another impossible challenge. Today, she had proven that legends could rise from calm, focus, and a single perfect shot, and everyone watching knew they had witnessed history. The desert fell into a tense silence, broken only by the faint whisper of wind against rocks. Kara lowered her rifle, calm and composed, though her mind raced with calculations and contingencies. Around her, the team was frozen, disbelief written across every face. 15 snipers had failed, yet one had succeeded where the impossible had seemed to prevail. The high-value target lay neutralized, and yet no one dared celebrate too loudly. Out here, in the unforgiving expanse of desert, a single misstep could erase success in an instant. Commander Harris exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders in a rare gesture of relief. "Unbelievable," he murmured, voice low but carrying weight. Every veteran present knew the truth. They had witnessed history. The impossible had been achieved not by luck but by the calm, methodical precision of one extraordinary sniper. Harris's eyes met Kara, and for a brief second no words were necessary. Respect, acknowledgement, and awe passed silently between them. The rest of the SEALs began to move, scanning the perimeter, checking for any secondary threats. Despite the success, the desert offered no guarantees. Enemy patrols could appear at any moment and the mission was far from over. Yet even amidst the heightened alert, whispers of admiration spread. "Did you see that?" one murmured. "She just hit him over 4,200 yards." Another shook his head, still unable to process the shot. The air was thick with a mix of adrenaline, relief, and disbelief. Kara remained focused. She scanned the compound with her scope, confirming that no other targets posed immediate danger. The bullet had struck cleanly. The mission's primary objective was complete. But Kara knew the team's safety was just as important as the success of the shot. The desert had a way of humbling even the most skilled operatives, and complacency could be fatal. Every step now would require the same precision, the same attention to detail that had guided her bullet through miles of air. As the team regrouped, Harris approached Kara quietly. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, was tinged with respect. "Not many can do what you just did," he said. Kara gave a slight nod, acknowledging the praise without letting it distract her focus. She had trained for this moment for years, and while pride lingered beneath her calm exterior, she knew the desert demanded humility. Success was fleeting, the work was never truly over. The team began the process of packing up, dismantling observation posts and preparing for extraction. Equipment was checked, rifles cleaned, scopes adjusted. The desert, though quiet now, seemed to hold its own watchful breath, a reminder that danger could return at any moment. Kara moved with practiced efficiency, every movement deliberate, conserving energy while maintaining vigilance. The mission's success had not lessened the stakes, it had heightened them. For the first time, whispers of admiration grew louder. Even those who had doubted her abilities now recognized the skill and courage required to make a shot of such magnitude. Other snipers, seasoned veterans, approached Kara, some with quiet nods, others with subtle smiles that carried recognition of her mastery. In the desert, respect was earned, not given. Today, Kara had earned hers in the most dramatic way possible. As extraction time approached, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The team moved toward their extraction point, still alert, still aware that danger lingered beyond the horizon. Kara brought up the rear, her eyes scanning for threats, her mind calculating every step. The impossible shot had succeeded, but survival demanded the same focus, the same discipline. Every heartbeat mattered, every decision could mean life or death. And yet, for the first time that morning, there was a subtle shift in the air. The impossible had been conquered. Respect had been earned. History had been made. Kara allowed herself a brief moment to feel the quiet satisfaction of mastery, knowing that while the desert tested them, today she had answered with precision, patience, and courage. The mission was far from over, but the impossible had been achieved, and everyone in the team knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The desert sun had climbed fully overhead, casting harsh light and long, shifting shadows across the rocky terrain. The SEAL team moved like shadows themselves, silent and methodical, every step calculated. Kara brought up the rear, her eyes scanning the horizon and every ridge rifle ready. The high-value target was down, but the mission was far from over. The desert was unforgiving, and enemy patrols could appear at any moment, eager to punish even a moment's carelessness. Every movement demanded precision. Loose sand could betray their presence. A single glint of sunlight off a scope or rifle could give them away. Kara led subtle adjustments, signaling silently to teammates, ensuring everyone maintained cover while advancing toward the extraction point. They moved in measured intervals, halting behind boulders, dropping low in the dips between ridges. The desert was alive with danger, the kind invisible to those untrained, but apparent to anyone who knew how to read its subtle signs. Commander Harris stayed near the center of the formation, scanning the distance, calculating time and approach for the extraction helicopter. Kara's position allowed her to monitor the rear, every muscle tense, every sense alert. The adrenaline of the previous shot still pulsed through her, but she kept her breathing controlled, her body poised for immediate action. Every step, every decision could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Suddenly, the faint sound of movement carried over the desert wind, footsteps on rock, distant but precise. Enemy scouts. Kara's fingers tightened around her rifle, eyes narrowing as she signaled to the team to halt and take cover. They melted into the terrain, blending with rocks and sand. The patrol passed, oblivious to the danger that lingered mere meters behind them. The team waited, tension radiating like electricity, until the threat had vanished. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. The extraction point was still distant, but the team pressed forward with calculated urgency. Kara moved silently, scanning for any trace of detection. Dust swirled in the heat waves, creating mirages that played tricks on the eye. Every ripple in the sand could be a threat, every shadow a potential ambush. Yet the team moved with fluid coordination, their trust in Kara and each other unspoken but absolute. The desert had demanded perfection, and they delivered. Hours felt like minutes as they navigated the harsh terrain. Rocks shifted beneath boots, gravel crunched softly in silence, wind carried their scent outward, but the team remained unseen. Kara led small course adjustments, optimizing cover while maintaining speed. Commander Harris, usually reserved, cast her a nod of acknowledgement, recognizing the skill and calm she brought to the rear. The impossible shot had won the mission, but it was Kara's vigilance now that preserved it. The helicopter appeared on the horizon, a distant speck at first, then a low hum growing louder. Relief rippled through the team, but they did not relax. The desert remained alive with potential threats. Kara scanned the approach path, noting every ridge, every possible vantage point an enemy could use. They moved in unison, timing their approach to remain hidden until the last possible moment. The team folded into cover near the landing zone, anticipation heavy in the air. As the rotor blades cut through the desert wind, kicking up clouds of dust and sand, the team prepared for immediate embarkation. Kara led the rear, ensuring no threat followed, every eye alert. One misstep could trigger chaos, but they moved with practiced precision. Commander Harris gave a final hand signal, move. They advanced, boarding quickly, seamlessly, the helicopter lifting off into the burning desert sky. Inside, Kara exhaled for the first time in hours, feeling tension release in a slow, controlled wave. Around her, the team exchanged quiet murmurs, some laughter, some whispered relief. Even Harris allowed a rare smile, eyes meeting Kara's with acknowledgement. The desert had tested them, yet they had emerged alive, mission accomplished, and history witnessed. The impossible shot had not only struck the target but had carried them through danger with skill, precision, and unwavering focus. As the helicopter rose, dust and sand swirling below, Kara allowed herself a quiet reflection. Every heartbeat, every calculation, every movement had led to this moment. The impossible had been achieved, but survival demanded vigilance until the very end. Today, she had proven herself, not just as a sniper, but as a leader, a protector, and a soldier who could navigate the line between legend and reality. The desert faded below, yet the lessons, the adrenaline, and the quiet pride would remain. Back at the base, the air was cooler, conditioned, yet tension still lingered like a shadow. The desert, miles behind them, had left its imprint on every member of the SEAL team. Kara stepped lightly across the concrete floors, rifle slung, boots silent. Around her, teammates were checking equipment, speaking in low murmurs, the energy still electric from what had just occurred. The impossible shot, the one that had seemed unfathomable at 4,200 yards, had become reality. Even seasoned snipers struggled to process what they had witnessed. Commander Harris entered the debriefing room with his usual measured stride, eyes scanning every face before settling on Kara. She met his gaze steadily, unflinching. He gestured for her to sit, and the rest of the team followed, forming a semicircle around the briefing table. Maps, scope footage, and satellite imagery were spread across the surface, replaying the mission in stark detail. Every tiny adjustment, every calculation, every trajectory over miles of desert was there, frozen for analysis. Kara's pulse had slowed, but her mind remained alert, dissecting every moment with quiet focus. Harris began methodically. We have a lot to review. Threat neutralized cleanly, no collateral. Extraction went smoothly under high-risk conditions. All protocols executed flawlessly except, he paused, glancing at the first 15 snipers whose expressions reflected frustration and disbelief. Except, we all know the shot everyone said was impossible was executed flawlessly by Lieutenant Kara Sullivan. A ripple of murmurs ran through the room. Heads turned toward her. Some faces were wide-eyed, others hung in quiet admiration. Kara simply nodded, acknowledging the respect without words. She thought back to the desert, the heat, the dust, the wind, the miles of impossible trajectory. The calculation of bullet drop, the prediction of mirages, the subtle understanding of terrain, it all had to converge perfectly. Kara realized more than ever that skill alone wasn't enough. It had been her preparation, patience, and ability to remain calm under pressure that had carried the day. The desert had tested her, as it tested all SEALs, and she had answered with precision. One teammate finally broke the silence. "I've been on missions with legends," he said, voice low, "but I've never seen anything like that. Over 4,000 yards, clean hits. She made it look easy." Others nodded, their words carrying the awe of veterans who knew impossibility when they saw it. Kara's cheeks warmed slightly, but she didn't smile. Pride was fleeting in this world. Humility and vigilance were the real measures of a soldier. Harris leaned back, studying her. "Not many can do what you just did. Some will try their whole lives and never succeed. Today you set a standard, that shot, that's history. But remember, skill without discipline can kill you just as easily as the enemy can. Never forget that." Kara nodded, absorbing every word. She understood the balance of pride and humility, celebration and vigilance. Success was not permanent. It was a tool, a responsibility, a moment to be respected. After the formal debrief, Kara found a quiet corner, rifle set aside, hands clasped loosely in front of her. She replayed the mission in her mind, the wind calculations, the alignment, the perfect squeeze of the trigger. Each detail reminded her that this was more than a single shot. It was years of training, countless mornings and nights spent perfecting skills that now mattered in real life. She felt a quiet satisfaction but no euphoria. Victory, like the desert, was tempered by respect for its dangers. Outside, the sun dipped behind the base's perimeter, casting long shadows across the concrete and sand. Kara allowed herself a small smile, recalling the first time she had trained at impossible distances, alone in wind and rain, with nothing but determination and her rifle. Today, all that preparation had mattered. Today, she had earned the respect of the best soldiers in the world, and yet she knew the battlefield would demand more, always more. Her teammates approached, some with quiet nods, others with murmured congratulations. Harris gave a final approving glance, the rarest of gestures, silent but deeply meaningful. Kara returned to her gear, preparing for the next mission. The desert had tested her limits and she had proven them. The impossible shot was no longer just a story, it was reality. And in that reality, Kara Sullivan had become something more than a sniper. She had become a legend. The base had grown quiet after the debriefing, the desert's chaos replaced by the hum of air conditioning and distant machinery. Yet for Kara, the desert was still alive in her mind. The heat, the wind, the impossibly long shot that had defined the morning. She moved through the hallways with measured steps, rifle slung at her side, aware of every gaze that followed her. The team no longer saw just another sniper. They saw a legend in the making, someone who had redefined what was possible under fire. Even the most seasoned veterans of the SEAL team looked at her differently now. Whispers of her 4,200-yard shot circulated through the ranks. Some spoke in awe, others in disbelief, and a few quietly plotted to learn from her method, hoping to absorb even a fraction of her skill. Kara remained unflustered. Recognition was fleeting, skill and vigilance were eternal. She knew that every successful shot, every mission, demanded the same focus and patience that had guided her through this one. Commander Harris approached her as the sun began to set behind the base. His face was calm, but his eyes reflected something rare: pride. "You've set a new standard today," he said, voice steady. "Not just for yourself, but for every sniper who will follow. Remember, legends are made in moments like these, but they live in every decision afterward." Kara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The battlefield did not forgive hubris, and even a single lapse in focus could undo a lifetime of skill. Later, Kara found herself alone on the observation deck overlooking the desert. The wind carried faint traces of sand, reminding her of the day's impossible distance, the shot that had seemed so improbable just hours before. She replayed it in her mind: the calculations, the alignment, the tiny shifts in wind that had almost derailed the trajectory. And yet, despite the impossibility, the bullet had flown true. She allowed herself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction. She had proven herself, but more importantly, she had proven what discipline, preparation, and calm focus could accomplish. In the mess hall, her teammates gathered, sharing stories of the mission, their voices tinged with excitement and awe. Kara moved among them, listening but not dominating, absorbing the camaraderie that defined the SEALs. Even in victory, there was humility. Everyone knew that the desert, the battlefield, and fate were never entirely under their control. Yet today, Kara had bent those forces in her favor. Today, she had carved her place in history, and the others had witnessed it firsthand. As night fell, the base's lights flickered against the rising moon, casting shadows across the concrete and sand. Kara returned to her quarters, cleaning her rifle with meticulous care, every motion deliberate. Even after the impossible shot, the work continued. Every mission required preparation, vigilance, and focus. Success was fleeting. Skill was constant. She thought of the desert, the distance, the bullet spinning through the air, and a quiet resolve settled over her. There would always be another target, another impossible challenge, another test of skill. The next day's mission briefing flashed on the screen: new coordinates, new risks. Kara studied them with the same calm precision, already calculating angles, wind shifts, and environmental factors. The team would follow her lead, relying on her focus and experience. She understood the weight of expectation, but she welcomed it. The desert had tested her limits, and she had risen to meet them. Her legendary shot had not ended the mission. It had begun a legacy. Outside, the wind swept across the base, carrying the same whispering challenges that had greeted her in the desert. Kara Sullivan was no longer just a sniper among many. She was a symbol of what precision, patience, and courage could achieve. Legends were born in moments like her 4,200-yard shot, but they lived in the continuous mastery of skill, the quiet vigilance, and the unwavering commitment to mission and team. And as the moon rose over the desert horizon, Kara knew the story was far from over. There would be more impossible shots, more high-stakes missions, more moments that demanded perfection. But one thing was certain: the world, and the SEAL team, would never forget her name.